After looking at Twitter over the past few months, it seems like Halo Infinite has received some vast improvements that make it a completely different gaming experience compared to the last time I played it. And so, after a year and a half after leaving Infinite, I decided to give the game another chance. But before we get into what's new for me and my experiences, allow me to give you a recap of my experience with Infinite all the way from its announcement, to the initial launch, to the game's decline. It's 2018. At E3, we are treated to a realistic looking reveal trailer for an unknown game, showing us a wide variety of different settings and locales, filled with plants and animals, and as we see a group of Marines wandering through a field, we are treated to a shot of the Master Chief himself, with the trailer showcasing a brand new Halo game that's making a full return to the classic art style and musical choices. And I was pretty excited. It seemed like after Halo 5 the series was making its way back to being on the correct track. It's 2019. We are treated to an in-game cinematic of the game, revealing it to be called Halo Infinite, showcasing Master Chief stranded in space after some sort of huge battle over a Halo ring, which is now shattered. As they are spotted by an unknown force, Chief gets ready to fight, with a new cinematic playing of Chief seemingly approaching Cortana. The story was interesting to me, especially in regards to the fact that it seemed to be a more personal story for Chief, and I really enjoyed the last time they did that, so I wanted to see where it went. Over the next year, it was revealed that the Master Chief will be fighting against the mercenary alien force known as the Banished, first introduced in Halo Wars 2, and it will see him going around the ring bringing the fight to them and reuniting with the remnants of the UNSC. The game would be working on a new engine built for the game, and with the game intending to serve as a sort of soft reboot. I thought it was a bit of a strange decision to reboot your storyline after leaving your previous story on a massive cliffhanger, but I was certain that they would address it in the future. It's 2020. The game is set to come out this year, and after waiting patiently for nearly 5 years, we are treated to our first in-game sight of Halo Infinite's gameplay in the campaign. And I didn't really know how to feel about it. On the one hand, the art style looked great, the music was good, it was nice to see the brutes again and fight against AI that had all new different behaviour. On the other hand, the game seemed to be struggling to render the small section of the map that was used in the demo. The game somehow looked worse than the game that came out 8 years ago, and overall there just seemed to be a real lack of polish with the game. Not helped by the fact that the gameplay shown in the demo wasn't a few months old as we initially believed, but was in fact only a few weeks old at most, raising my concern about how much content that we'd be getting. After getting mocked into oblivion about how a game with so much time and development that is supposed to be the flagship series of the Xbox didn't live up to expectations, the game was announced to be delayed for another year to work on it. And at the time I thought that was a shame, but at least it wouldn't be a rushed project. And then Joseph Staten was hired to help with the development of the game and to make sure that it was finished by the time of next year. I really thought that that was a bit of a weird thing to do, considering that this game was supposed to come out in a few months, so I don't understand why someone would need to take control to make sure that it was ready to ship when it should already be in a position to ship. Over the next year, 343 decided to release a series of monthly statements, aiming to keep the community informed after so much silence. These statements would detail weapons, enemies, the game setting, gameplay features and customization. They would also release a series of multiplayer betas for people to play and give feedback on the game. It looked like this new transparency and player engagement was starting to get the game into the best shape possible for its release later in 2021, despite some uncertainty over Infinite being a live service game. Overall, I loved the gameplay in the tests. Halo 3 was my favourite game to play, and I always felt that every game after it was a step down. So seeing Infinite downplaying Sprint and showing that equipment drops were making a return got me genuinely excited. Later on, a vidoc is released talking about aspirations for multiplayer, how they hope players will be able to come up with unique and interesting techniques with the sandbox, and the customization and battle passes, with us being promised that they wanted to ensure that the content in the battle passes was worth it. And that, despite a few things here and there, everything else will be unlocked by playing the game, with millions of customization options being able to be used on release. And then it happened. On the 15th of November, I just finished work when there was an announcement made for the game. Although slated for release on December the 8th, and although the campaign would be releasing on December the 8th, they decided that an earlier version of multiplayer would be releasing to play tonight. And so I jumped in the car, I rushed home, I got it installed, and I couldn't wait to play it. And I was fucking disappointed. It was pretty clear that the game wasn't even close to being in a completed stage, and that this was after a year delaying the game. So part of me is really hoping a 2020 version of the game exists somewhere just so I can see how completely fucking incomprehensible the game was. Just like in Halo 5, many very basic game modes that shouldn't be hard to implement weren't in the game. And this, combined with the lack of maps, led to the game feeling very repetitive. The netcode and the engine in general was very buggy, causing lots of lag to the point that some people couldn't even play the game. Many of the weapons that seemed fine in the beta were now basically beyond use, with the Ravager, Pulse Rifle, Commando and Disruptor struggling to perform their basic functions. And there was a lot of balancing issues, especially for big team battle. The vehicle and gravity physics of the game also seemed very off, with vehicles having odd movements and the gravity hammer seeming to lack much propulsion behind its swings. The millions of customization options was also a complete lie, with there being maybe a few hundred at most if you included title cards and emblems, and most of the customization was locked behind a paywall. In fact, despite being a series that had the reputation of having a wide amount of armor, colours and designs for player expression, there was less customization available on launch than there was in the random multiplayer mode for Doom 2016. It was also apparent that they had taken some of the most popular Halo Reach armor pieces out of the Battle Pass and intended to sell them in the store, with 20 levels of the Battle Pass being removed to do this. Speaking of missing customization, there was stuff found in the game codes that wasn't available to unlock either through campaign, playing the multiplayer, getting a Battle Pass or the store, making us question why so much content seemed to be vaulted away. To this day, I also don't understand why they would try and segregate armor pieces to different cores. It was very clear that this was just used as an excuse to sell the same product multiple times, and the prices in the store were egregious. There's no supply issues when it comes to selling these skins, so there should be no reason why any of them should be costing about the third of a game's retail price. The social issues for the game was also a problem. Trying to play a game as a party was basically impossible because it wouldn't keep track of who was in your party, separating you after each match, and in the case of big team battle, it would sometimes assign you a squad with strangers instead of assigning you with your teammates. In custom games, sometimes the lobby would just eject people and not even let them connect in the first place. And you couldn't make specific custom game modes because the game would delete any presets that you created. There was also no file share system to give others some unique game modes, and because once again there was no Forge mode on launch, there was no cool custom maps to play. Then there was the weekly challenge system and ranking up. In Infinite there was no ranking system available, so after completing the battle pass, any XP you earned might as well have just been pissed in the wind because there was no use for it. Speaking of which, the only way you could rank up your battle pass was through challenges, as for some reason, no matter how well you did, you earned absolutely nothing from playing the game normally. Because of this, most of the time in games you would see people playing strangely or ignoring the objective because they were focusing on completing their challenges. And what kind of challenges did they ask you to do? Well, some of them would be to destroy a vehicle, like a Wraith. Except as I mentioned, the big team battle games weren't balanced properly, and so there was a good chance you wouldn't see a Wraith spawn for several matches, never mind be the one to destroy it. Sometimes they wanted you to win specific matches, like capture the flag or oddball. Except because of the lack of playlists, there was a chance that you wouldn't even get the specific game mode you were looking for, and even if you did, there was no guarantee that you would win it. And then there was the ultra specific challenges, such as using a sniper rifle to headshot someone that is driving a vehicle, meaning that you had to hope that you got the sniper, hope that someone on the other team was driving a vehicle, and then hope that you got the shot off on a moving target. It was very obvious that this was deliberately done in order to encourage people to buy challenge swaps from the store to get better challenges. Well, were the weekly rewards worth it at least? Sometimes. If you did all of them, you might get a weekly reward that was an armor piece or a visor colour, something cool. Other times they might just give you an emblem, and then the next week it would give you the same emblem, and then the week after that it would give you the same emblem. It was very clear that the system was designed to be as slow moving as possible, giving you the same reward multiple times because an emblem for a weapon is separate from an emblem for a vehicle, even if it's technically the exact same emblem. This challenge system did them no favours when, in December, they released a patch that made the matchmaking worse and made finding a big team battle match basically impossible. They then took time off for the Christmas holidays before coming back to fix the problem, meaning that for nearly 2 months one of the 4 game modes in the game was broken and therefore you couldn't complete your weekly challenges if you didn't have money to buy challenge swaps. I knew the hype for the multiplayer was pretty much doomed when it was announced that the live service game that had years of development was going to have to extend its current season because the next batch of content wasn't ready. That, combined with a campaign that was pretty enjoyable but also easily forgettable and not well written, didn't help its release. While we waited for the next season to come out, there was 2 problems clear for general Halo fans who were hoping for the game to get better. The first problem was the general apathy and insincerity from 343. When it came down to defending some of the features and changes in the game, a lot of the responses from them essentially boiled down to, this is how the game works, this is the design choice we went with, deal with it. And the smugness in response to valid questions was also noted by the community. This wasn't even a Halo Infinite specific problem either. When asked by a fan why the Halo Wars 2 matchmaking wasn't working, one of the developers tried to use the Russian-Ukraine war as an excuse as why they hadn't heard about the problem or been working on it, saying that they couldn't imagine the war, death and suffering going on in the world. This is despite the fact that war, death and suffering has been going on pretty much consistently for the past century, and there was the fact that the Halo Wars 2 servers shut down 2 days before the Russian-Ukraine war started, making us wonder why they hadn't noticed one of their games had gone down for over a day. When called out on this, the individual apologised, but once again it was very passive aggressively and basically blamed the fan base in a very unprofessional manner. The second clear problem for Infinite was the strange desire to cater to the esports community, despite the fact that esports make up a very small section of the gaming community. While the banished weapons could be a bit difficult to use at times, especially the Ravager and the Stalker rifle, the extra melee damage was well received by fans as a way for the guns to stand out. But the esports members complained about it, so the extra damage was removed from the weapons. Many people enjoyed the Mangler, and utilising its melee helped to make up for the slow fire rate and projectile speed. But again, because the esports community complained about it, the Mangler had this removed and became a less viable weapon to use. Esports players, despite supposedly being good at the game, constantly push for the battle rifle to be the main weapon on every map, wanting players to start with BRs and wanting the melee damage increased despite not being a banished weapon, at least in the ranked mode. There was also a bigger focus given to the more competitive modes over the casual fun playlists, making people wait for very simple basic game modes like Team Snipers to be added to the game. And so I waited for Season 2, and while they did start to fix the engine, decrease the store prices and add some basic game modes, it was a long 6-month wait for Season 2. And what were we graced with when Season 2 finally rolled around? 2 new maps, and a discounted Battle Royale mode that people didn't enjoy playing that much, so they had to take it out of the game because there wasn't a consistent player base to help justify keeping the playlist. And then we were told that we wouldn't be waiting 3 months for the next season, because the game was so buggy and broken that they would have to postpone making content for the game until it was fixed. This was a decision they made a year and a half after the game initially was supposed to release. And so I just sort of quit. I'm a bit OCD about completing stuff, so I was already a bit pissed off that no matter what I did, I would never be able to unlock all the armor customization, so the fact that this was followed up by a complete lack of fun and basically no new content just made me stop. I completed the Season 2 pass and that was it, I was just done with the game really. I didn't really bother trying to keep up with what was going on with Infinite, but I still heard the major points that came up. For a start, pretty much all of the major management for the game was fired. Bonnie Ross and Frankie were no longer running things on the game side, and Kiki Wolfkill was let go as well. Not quick enough to stop her from making the Halo TV show, but better late than never I suppose. We also heard about how poor the development cycle was and how the people in charge basically had no idea what they were doing. If only there was a person who was in charge of the studio, was a major executive for Xbox, it could have done something to keep things on track. They were also dropping a free battle pass around Christmas time to help give people something to work towards. And while I can't really give them credit for that because it's just the stuff that they took out of the Halo Reach battle pass that they were going to try and sell us in the store, I kinda get why other people would appreciate the sentiment. By Christmas time, the game had improved significantly performance-wise, and despite the unfortunate news that a bunch of the developers were let go by Microsoft, it pleased me to hear that the new man in charge was Pierre Hintz, the man who was in charge of unfucking up the disastrous release of the Master Chief Collection and got it ported to PC. And so we reach now. After a year and a half of not playing the game, I decided to give it another try, especially with the release of Forge, and as I heard that 343 had reversed some of the dumb decisions that was made to appease the esports crowd, like the Mangler's one-shot, one melee kill potential. So, what's my impression after playing the game now? I think the game is pretty good in all honesty. The gameplay is a lot smoother now. I didn't have a single instance of lag or disconnecting from any of my games. There's a wider variety of maps, both inspired by old maps and brand new ones created from scratch. And the balancing seems to be a lot better for team players, especially in regards to the big team battle maps and the spawning of heavy vehicles. There's also a wide variety of different modes that have been introduced, from Husky Raid to Infection to Squad Battles. They've also added a new weapon. Well, technically 2 new weapons. We have the Bandit, which is the Halo Reach DMR with the scope removed. The gun is designed for short to medium range and kills in 5 shots. It has a bit of a kick to it, but overall I much prefer this over the Commando. There's also the Bandit Evo, which is a variant of the Bandit, but instead of having iron sights it has a holographic sight, giving it a bit more range and is used in more of the competitive playlists. I haven't used it yet, but if it's the same as the Bandit, then I guess it's just going to give you a bit more range at the cost of field of view and the ability to lose your scope when taking damage, so I still think it's probably a good weapon. I also enjoy the new equipment they introduced. The Shroud basically acts like a smoke grenade that stops people from seeing the area it's deployed on. It's a pretty useful tool without being overpowered, as hostiles can still fire through it and get kills. But if you use it in the right way, you can use it to shield objectives and to get the drop on your enemies. The challenges are also significantly improved. Instead of challenges that require you to go out of your way to do specific actions, or requiring you to get lucky and be paired with good teammates to win matches, instead you usually just need to complete a certain number of matches, get some headshots with weapons that are a lot more accessible thanks to the more social game modes, or even just get kills with the pistol. So far, all of the rewards I've gotten have been decent as well, from armor pieces and weapon charms, not just one emblem that I'll need to unlock another 4 times. Speaking of armor pieces, the customization has a wide variety to offer as well. While I still don't like the core system and I wish they had just given us different undersuits like they introduced into MCC, at least there's a lot more cores now, and the ability to swap visors and helmet onto any core gives a lot more expression for players. The social setting for the game has also drastically improved. When the game came out, the social aspects of the game basically didn't exist. Even after Season 2 came out, there wasn't really any way to connect to the game's population besides just playing matches. Custom games now work properly, allowing friends to chill out together without the risk of disconnecting constantly. The file share system is introduced to help share cool maps and game modes to people. And now, just like with the Master Chief Collection, you can join people's custom games and have fun with strangers, which I think is really good for building the community back up. The XP and progression system has also been heavily revamped. In terms of battle pass progression, you can now earn a certain amount of XP per match, and if you win or land in the top players, you earn more XP, so you don't just have to do challenges to rank up your battle pass. There is also a ranking system that levels up your rank, earning emblems and other rewards, with the reward for reaching the max rank being the Mark 6 armor from the campaign, which I think is a pretty decent reward for basically just playing the game. And of course, the Forge system. Now, I'm not the type of person who has the time or the skills to use the Forge mode to its fullest potential, but I've always had an appreciation for those that do. And let me tell you, people are really making some truly unique map and game modes because of this Forge system. It's so intricate and vast that it's not even really a map builder like in the previous games. It's a fully fledged level builder, allowing scripted sequences and enemy AI to create scenarios that weren't possible in multiplayer outside of mods. After seeing a bunch of different videos on Forge, I wholeheartedly believe that not only is this the best Forge ever in Halo, but it's probably one of the greatest systems ever created in gaming history. And the fact that it's just released for the free part of Halo Infinite is unbelievable to me, because I feel like this is the sort of thing that you should be charging for use of. So, is Halo Infinite good now? Absolutely, it's not even a debate, especially for a free game, and it seems after 5 seasons the player base has grown significantly. But is Halo Infinite great? Unfortunately, while I am heavily enjoying the game and I intend to keep playing it for the foreseeable future, I think the game is still struggling to reach its full potential and being great for a few key reasons. For a start, over the weeks playing, I've managed to play exactly 1 infection game. I also haven't managed to play some of the other playlists, so I've got no idea if the matchmaking is still fucked or if people really just don't want to play these playlists. The wait times also isn't exactly accurate, and I know it's an estimate, but sometimes it'll tell me I need to wait a minute but it finds me a match in 10 seconds, other times it'll tell me I need to wait 2 minutes and then 5 minutes later I'm still searching. And I'm not playing at some ridiculous time like 12 PM or 5 in the morning, I'm playing at a reasonable time, so I'm not quite sure why it's so difficult for me to find matches. Another thing that saddens me to see is the Halo 3 playlist that they've introduced and the fact that 343 still seems to cater to esports players a lot. It looked like initially players started with an assault rifle and a pistol at the start of the game. You know, the same loadout that we had in Halo 3, which this playlist is trying to replicate. Well, apparently the people who are so good at the game that they call themselves pros couldn't function without starting with a battle rifle. So instead of having to play the game as intended like a fucking normal person, now the pistol's been swapped for a BR, and the playlist has just been ruined by sweaty players spamming the BR across the map. 343, for the love of God, please stop listening to these fucking morons. If they struggle so much to play the game normally, then that's on them. Stop changing the game and balancing it in their favour just to stop them crying about it on Twitter. Speaking of playlists, another problem I have is that I don't think there's enough game modes yet. Yes, they've added stuff, but let's be honest, these are simple game modes that shouldn't have really taken this long to be added in the first place. So in terms of actual new experiences that we haven't really played before, I just don't feel like there's any new playlists. Which I think is a shame, because now thanks to Forge being able to bring in new custom maps and the ability to modify player traits and add enemy AI, I think there should be a hell of a lot more player choice than what we have. And on the topic of game modes, please don't ever tie in actual multiplayer content with a multiplayer storyline again. Let's be honest, it shouldn't have needed to take this long for Infection to appear in the game. It did only because they tried to add armor effects and features that were only necessary because of the story that they were using at the time. A story that they are no longer following. Customization. I think they've made a good start, but like I said, the core system is a terrible system, and I really hope that they add the rest of the armor pieces to any body that they want, treating the core similar to the undersuit customization in the Master Chief Collection. The amount of customization is also still a bit shocking to me, with most of the armor still being locked away and the store prices are still just as ridiculous as before. It really baffles me how pricey this stuff is when there's literally no costs to justify it. Also, I'm still a bit confused why it's only the UNSC stuff that gets customization. Like, there's so many non-UNSC weapons and vehicles that could be customized. And indeed, there are variants of the guns that show off that customization. So I'm a bit confused about why a gun that has been in the game for less than a year has more options than guns that have been in the game since launch. So yeah, I still have some problems with the game. However, the game actually feels like a finished product now, and the multiplayer is free, so I highly encourage you to check it out if you haven't played it before or if you left the game ages ago. I just hope that now that the old management is gone, 343 can release a game that actually feels complete for the first time since Halo 4. For the next game's campaign, story and writing, if you're going to make it open world again, please take advantage of it. Have big boss fights and missions that take place outside of corridors, and please include some side missions to make full use of the map, because if it's just going to be main missions and nothing else, you might as well have just removed the open world altogether. Have co-op from the start, have mission select features, and don't patch out fun stuff in the game just because that's not how it's supposed to be played. And for the love of God, stick to a storyline. You had the Didact story to continue after Halo 4 and you bottled it. You had the Spartan Ops story and you bottled it. You had the Cortana story at the end of Halo 5 and you bottled it. You were going to have the Created appear in Halo Wars 2 and then you bottled it for the Flood. And then it looks like, despite saying that you thought this game was going to last for the next 10 years, implying story DLC, you've confirmed that there isn't going to be any story DLC coming now, and you've bottled the multiplayer story as well. Either start to make self-contained stories or actually follow through on your sequels. And from the multiplayer side, stop trying to cater to a wider audience by making the game a free-to-play live service microtransaction infested husk of a game. Don't limit the amount of content in the game by trying to tie it into game modes to some sort of story. Don't constantly change game modes to appeal to people who call themselves pro players yet struggle to play the game as it is. And please try and ensure that what you have now is the low bar for your next game. You struggled with the Master Chief Collection, you struggled with Halo 5, and you've struggled with Infinite. Literally the only reason I'm tempted to get the next Halo game when it comes out is because Pierre Hintz is now in charge. And that's because I've not only seen how passionate he is about the franchise, but he actually has evidence to show how committed he is to doing something. Not only fixing the Master Chief Collection into a workable state, but bringing it to PC and completely transforming how the game is played. If Pierre and the team can keep it up and keep Infinite's engagement going while the next game is worked on, then I'm more than happy to give Halo another shot. Thanks for watching, lads and lasses. Hopefully my video has been very informative and you can understand why I feel the way I do about Infinite in the Halo franchise. And perhaps I've inspired some of you to check out the franchise for the first time, or even managed to get some of the more cynical former fans to give it a chance. It's not perfect, but it feels like 343 are heading in the right direction for the first time in a while. If you enjoyed my video, please consider liking, subscribing and checking out some of my other videos. And if you're feeling very generous, please consider my Patreon or YouTube membership. But overall, I just hope you had a great day and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.